The preacher's wife in Las Lunas, New Mexico, said it first in the spring of 1873, standing on the dusty street corner with her parasol blocking the harsh sun while Zara Pemberton swept the mercantile steps for the third time that morning. That girl will never find her place anywhere, mark my words. Too wild in her eyes, too defiant in her heart. No proper man will have her, and no respectable family will keep her. Zara had heard variations of this assessment her entire 22 years. Her father had died when she was 6, leaving her mother to raise 3 daughters alone. When consumption took her mother 4 years ago, her sisters married quickly, desperate for security. Zara had been passed between relatives like an unwanted package, each household finding some reason she did not fit. Her aunt in Santa Fe said she asked too many questions. Her uncle in Albuquerque claimed she frightened away his business partners with her direct gaze and sharper tongue. Her cousin here in Las Lunas let her sleep in the storage room behind the mercantile in exchange for endless work, but made it clear this arrangement was temporary charity, not permanent acceptance. The desert heat shimmered off the packed earth as Zara finished sweeping and carried the broom inside. The mercantile smelled of leather, tobacco, and the perpetual dust that no amount of cleaning could eliminate. Her cousin Margaret stood behind the counter, counting coins with the meticulous attention she gave everything except human kindness. "You need to fetch more water from the well," Margaret said without looking up. "And after that, inventory the entire storeroom. I believe you have been stealing." "I have not stolen anything." Zara kept her voice level, though anger burned in her chest. "Nevertheless, I want a complete inventory by sunset. If the numbers do not match my records, you will leave this establishment immediately." Zara grabbed the water buckets and walked into the blazing afternoon. The well sat at the far edge of town, past the saloon where rough voices spilled through the swinging doors, past the livery where horses stamped in their stalls, past the small adobe church where judgment was dispensed more freely than grace. She filled the buckets and started back, her shoulders aching from the weight. "Need help with those?" She glanced at the man who had spoken. He wore a suit too fine for Las Lunas and a smile too practiced to be genuine. She had seen him around town for the past week, asking questions, watching people with calculating eyes. "I manage fine on my own." "I am sure you do. I am Theodore Whitman. I have been observing you, Miss Pemberton. You work hard, probably without much appreciation or compensation." Zara kept walking. Theodore fell into step beside her. "I run several establishments in Denver and San Francisco. High-end establishments where intelligent, attractive young women can earn more in a month than you will see in years of this menial labor. Room and board provided, fine dresses, jewels even. All you need is the courage to leave this dusty nowhere town." "I know what kind of establishments you mean, Mr. Whitman. The answer is no." His smile tightened. "You think you are too good for honest work. Look around you. This town has already decided what you are. At least in my employ you would profit from their assumptions. The buckets are getting heavy and you are in my way." Something ugly flickered across his face before the smile returned. "Think about it. I will be at the saloon through the week. When your cousin finally throws you out, and she will, you will wish you had been more polite." He tipped his hat and walked away. Zara continued to the mercantile, her arms trembling by the time she set the buckets down. Margaret glanced at the water, then at Zara. "You took long enough. Get started on that inventory." The storeroom was cramped and hot, filled with crates and barrels stacked to the ceiling. Zara lit a lantern and began counting, writing numbers in the ledger Margaret had provided. Hours passed. The light through the high window faded from white to gold to purple. Her stomach growled, but she knew better than to expect dinner before finishing. She was counting sacks of flour when she heard voices in the main room. Margaret speaking in her sharp, irritated tone and a deeper voice, low and measured. Zara tried to ignore them and focus on her work. "I need supplies for 3 weeks in the high country," the man was saying. "Flour, salt, coffee, ammunition for a Henry rifle, dried beans, sugar if you have it. We have everything. It will be expensive. I have money." Footsteps approached the storeroom. Margaret pushed the door open. "Get 2 20-pound sacks of flour, and be quick about it." Zara straightened, brushing dust from her worn dress. She grabbed the first sack and carried it into the main room. The man standing at the counter made her pause despite herself. He stood well over 6 feet, with shoulders that seemed to fill half the room. His hair fell past his collar, dark brown with hints of auburn where the lamplight caught it. He wore buckskin clothing that had seen hard use, and he carried himself with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to relying on his own strength. His forearms, visible where his sleeves were rolled back, showed corded muscle developed from years of physical labor. A hunting knife hung at his belt, and his hands looked strong enough to break wood with ease. He glanced at her as she set the flour on the counter, and his eyes were the color of storms over mountains, gray, blue, and startlingly direct. Something in his gaze made her feel seen in a way that was both unsettling and oddly comforting. "Thank you," he said, his voice a low rumble. She nodded and returned to the storeroom for the second sack. When she brought it out, Margaret was wrapping his other purchases with jerky, aggressive movements. "That will be $18.40. The man counted out coins without arguing over the inflated price. As Margaret recorded the sale, he looked at Zara again. "You work here." "For now," she said before she could think better of it. Margaret shot her a venomous look. "She does whatever I tell her to do, which is more than she manages most days. Now if you would take your purchases, sir, we are closing." The man gathered his supplies with easy strength, loading them into a canvas pack that already looked heavy. His eyes lingered on Zara for another moment, something thoughtful in his expression, before he nodded to them both and walked out into the gathering dusk. "Get back to that inventory," Margaret snapped. "And do not speak to customers unless I give you permission. You are an embarrassment." Zara worked until the lantern burned low and her eyes strained in the dimness. When she finally brought the ledger to Margaret, her cousin scrutinized every line. "3 tins of peaches are missing. They were sold last Tuesday. You did not record it. Are you calling me incompetent? I am saying I did not take them." Margaret closed the ledger with a sharp snap. "You have until the end of the week. Friday night you leave. I am done with your presence in my establishment and my home." Zara wanted to argue, to defend herself, to rage against the unfairness. Instead, she swallowed the words and nodded. What would be the point? She had learned years ago that defending herself only made people more convinced of her guilt. That night, lying on the thin pallet in the storage room, she stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine where she would go. She had $7 saved, hidden in the lining of her carpet bag. It was not enough for a train ticket to anywhere that mattered, not enough to rent a room for more than a week or two. Las Lunas had no employment for a woman alone except washing laundry or cooking, and those positions were held by women with families, with connections, with places in the community. The preacher's wife was right, she thought bitterly. She would never find her place anywhere. The next morning, Margaret sent her to deliver a package to the doctor's wife. Zara walked through streets already baking under the climbing sun, past houses with gardens and children playing, past lives that would never include her. Mrs. Harrington answered the door, accepted the package with barely a glance, and closed the door without a word of thanks. On her way back, Zara saw the mountain man again. He was at the livery, loading his pack onto a mule while speaking with the livery owner. In daylight, he looked even more formidable. His shirt stretched across his broad back, and his movements had the economical grace of someone who spent his life in physical labor. As she watched, he lifted a sack that probably weighed 80 pounds and settled it onto the mule as easily as if it were filled with feathers. She should have kept walking, but something made her stop. Perhaps it was the memory of how he had looked at her the previous evening, without judgment, without assumption. Perhaps it was simple curiosity about a life so different from her own narrow existence. He glanced over and saw her watching. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the dusty expanse. Then he raised one hand in acknowledgement, a small gesture that somehow conveyed respect rather than mere politeness. The livery owner noticed her and said something to the mountain man. They both looked at her, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the sun. She turned and hurried back to the mercantile, feeling foolish. Margaret was waiting. "You took too long. Again. At this rate, you will be gone by Wednesday instead of Friday." The doctor's wife took time answering her door. Always an excuse. Always someone else's fault. "Do you know what your problem is, Zara? You think you are better than your circumstances, better than the people who have shown you charity. But you are not. You are exactly what you appear to be, a burden no one wants." The words struck like physical blows, all the more painful because part of Zara feared they were true. She spent the rest of the day in silence, performing her tasks with mechanical efficiency, trying not to think about Friday, about the future, about anything at all. That evening, she walked to the edge of town where the desert stretched endlessly toward mountains that rose like purple promises in the distance. The sun set in spectacular colors, gold and orange and red painting the sky. She wondered what it would be like to simply walk into that vast emptiness and disappear. Would anyone notice? Would anyone care? Beautiful, is it not? She spun around. The mountain man stood a few yards away, his approach silent despite his size. Up close, she could see details she had missed before. A scar along his jawline, the weathered tan of his skin, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners as if he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. "I did not hear you. Sorry. Did not mean to startle you. I am heading out tomorrow, back up to the high country. Saw you standing here and wanted to say goodbye. We have not even been introduced. Why would you say goodbye to a stranger? Because you looked like you could use a friendly word, and because you do not seem like a stranger somehow." He extended his hand. "Harrison Mackenzie. Most folks call me Mac." She hesitated, then took his hand. His grip was warm and strong, calloused from hard work but gentle despite his obvious strength. "Zara Pemberton. Pleased to meet you properly, Miss Pemberton. Your cousin runs that mercantile with an iron fist. She is not known for her warmth. She is not known for her fairness either, from what I hear in town." Harrison studied her face. "Forgive me if I am speaking out of turn, but you seem troubled. I know we do not know each other, but sometimes a stranger is easier to talk to than people who think they know your whole story. What makes you think there is anything to talk about? The way you are standing here staring at the desert like you are measuring the distance. And the way your cousin speaks to you. I only spent 10 minutes in that mercantile, and I could see clear enough how things stand." Zara felt unexpected tears prick her eyes and blinked them back angrily. "She is turning me out on Friday. No references, no recommendations, just out. And before you offer advice, I have nowhere to go. No family who will take me, no skills that anyone in this town values, and not enough money to get anywhere else. So yes, I am troubled, but talking about it will not change the facts." Harrison was quiet for a moment, his gaze steady and thoughtful. "I live up in the Manzano Mountains about 30 miles east of here. Have a cabin, some trap lines, a decent piece of land. It is hard country but beautiful, peaceful. I come down to Las Lunas 3-4 times a year for supplies, but mostly I stay up there alone." "That sounds lonely." "It is. Been thinking lately that maybe I am tired of lonely." He cleared his throat, and she realized with surprise that this large, confident man was nervous. "I know this is going to sound strange, and you can tell me to mind my own business. But I have been watching you, and I see someone who works hard, who does not complain, who stands straight even when people are cruel. Those are good qualities, better than most of what passes for virtue in towns. And I have a cabin that is too empty and land that could use a woman's touch, and if you need a place, well, I am offering one." Zara stared at him, not sure she understood correctly. "Are you proposing marriage to a woman you met yesterday?" "I am proposing a solution that might benefit us both." "Marriage, yes, if you are willing. I am not going to pretend it would be a conventional courtship. But I can offer you a home, protection, a place where no one will tell you that you do not belong. And in return, I would have companionship, someone to share the work and the seasons with. Someone to come home to. You know nothing about me. I know you are strong. I know you are not afraid of hard work. I know you have pride and spirit even when people try to break them. That is more than most couples know about each other when they marry." He shifted his weight, looking uncertain for the first time. "Look, I am not good with words. I spend most of my time with mules and deer, not people. But I am a good man. I do not drink to excess, I do not gamble, and I do not raise my hand to women or animals. I keep my word. If you married me, I would treat you with respect and kindness, and I would make sure you always had a place, not just in my home but beside me. As a partner, not a servant." The offer was insane. She had known this man for perhaps 20 minutes total. Everything rational said she should refuse, should find some other solution, any other solution. But what other solution was there? The memory of Theodore Whitman's calculating smile flashed through her mind. That was one option. The desert was another. Or she could try to make her way to another town where she knew no one, had no prospects, and would face the same suspicion and rejection she found everywhere. "I would be a terrible wife," she heard herself say. "Everyone says so. I am too opinionated, too difficult, too much trouble. I live on a mountain. I think I can handle difficult." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "And I would rather have someone with opinions than someone who just agrees with everything I say, gets boring talking to yourself all winter. This is completely insane." "Probably. But that does not make it wrong." Zara looked at him, really looked at him. He stood relaxed but alert, his gray-blue eyes steady on hers. There was no pressure in his expression, no manipulation. He had made an offer and was waiting for her answer, prepared to accept either response. Something in her chest loosened, some knot of tension she had carried so long she had forgotten it was there. Here was someone offering her not charity but partnership, not temporary tolerance but permanent belonging. It was insane and impulsive, and everything she had been taught to avoid. "Yes," she said quietly. "Yes, I will marry you." His smile widened, transforming his face from merely handsome to genuinely warm. "You will not regret this, I promise you that. When would we leave?" "I need to finish getting supplies tomorrow morning." "We could be married tomorrow afternoon and leave Thursday at dawn. That would give you time to gather whatever you want to bring. I know it is rushed, but no, that is perfect. The sooner the better, actually." They stood in the fading light, two people who had just made a decision that would change everything. Harrison reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand again. "I will make you happy," he said. "I may not know all the right words or proper ways, but I will do everything in my power to make sure you never regret saying yes. I will hold you to that, he grinned. I hope you do. They made arrangements to meet at the church the next afternoon. Harrison would speak to the preacher and handle the legalities. Zara would pack her few possessions and inform Margaret of her plans. Walking back to the mercantile, Zara felt a strange lightness, as if she might float away into the darkening sky. She was going to marry a mountain man she barely knew and move to a cabin in the wilderness. It was the most reckless thing she had ever done. It was also, she realized, the first time in her life she had chosen her own path. Margaret was closing the store when Zara entered. Her cousin glanced at her with familiar irritation. "Where have you been? You disappeared for over an hour." "I was speaking with Harrison Mackenzie. We are getting married tomorrow." Margaret's mouth fell open. For a long moment she simply stared. Then she laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "You are joking. That mountain man. He is proposing marriage to you. Why would he possibly want someone like you? Perhaps because he sees something you do not. He is probably desperate for a woman, any woman, or simple-minded. Or he plans to work you to death up on that mountain and needs someone too desperate to refuse." Margaret shook her head. "Well, it solves my problem, I suppose. You will be gone even sooner than planned. Do not come crying to me when you realize what a mistake you have made." "I would never come crying to you regardless," Zara said quietly. "You have made it abundantly clear that I have no place here, so I am finding a place somewhere else." She went to the storage room and pulled out her carpet bag. Her possessions fit easily inside. 3 dresses, all well worn but carefully mended. A shawl her mother had knitted. A book of poetry, the only luxury she had kept through all her moves. Undergarments, stockings, a hairbrush. Looking at the meager collection, she felt a pang of sadness for the life she had imagined as a girl, before death and disappointment had stripped away illusions. But then she thought of Harrison's steady eyes, his strong hands, his promise of a place beside him. It might not be the life she had imagined, but perhaps it would be better. Perhaps it would be real. She slept little that night, her mind racing with questions and possibilities. What was his cabin like? Would she be able to manage the isolation? Would he regret his impulsive proposal once he knew her better? Would she regret accepting it? Morning came with brilliant sunshine flooding through the high window. Zara washed with cold water from the pitcher, then dressed in her best dress, a deep blue calico that brought out the darkness of her hair. She brushed and braided her hair with trembling fingers, then tied it up in a simple style. Margaret barely acknowledged her at breakfast. Zara ate toast and drank coffee in silence, then cleaned the dishes while her cousin opened the store. "I am going to the church at 2 o'clock, Zara said. "I will collect my bag and leave from there." "Good riddance," Margaret muttered. The morning crawled past. Zara occupied herself with final tasks, cleaning corners that would never be clean enough for Margaret, organizing shelves that would be disorganized by evening. At 1:30, she changed into her blue dress, pinned up her hair more carefully, and allowed herself one moment of doubt. Then she picked up her carpet bag and walked out of the mercantile for the last time. The church was small and plain, its adobe walls thick against the heat. Zara pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped into cool dimness. Harrison stood near the altar, speaking with Reverend Phillips. Both men turned as she entered. Harrison wore clean clothes, his hair tied back, his boots polished. The careful attention to his appearance touched her more than elaborate gestures would have. He had clearly made an effort for this occasion for her. "Miss Pemberton," Reverend Phillips said stiffly, "Mr. Mackenzie has informed me of your intentions. I must say, this is highly irregular. I have serious concerns about performing a marriage for 2 people who barely know each other." "We know each other well enough," Harrison said. His voice was respectful but firm. "And we are both adults capable of making our own decisions. Will you perform the ceremony or not?" The Reverend looked disapproving but resigned. "I will, though I do so with reservations. We will need witnesses." "I asked the livery owner and his wife," Harrison said. "They should be here shortly." They arrived minutes later, a middle-aged couple who ran the livery with quiet competence. Mrs. Garcia smiled at Zara with unexpected warmth. "I think it is romantic," she whispered. "Do not listen to the gossips." The ceremony was brief and simple. Reverend Phillips read the traditional words in a monotone voice, clearly wanting the irregular proceeding finished quickly. Harrison repeated his vows in a strong, steady voice, his eyes never leaving Zara's face. When it was her turn, she was surprised by how easily the words came, how much she meant them despite their brief acquaintance. "I now pronounce you man and wife. Mr. Mackenzie, you may kiss your bride." Harrison stepped closer. He cupped her face gently in his large hands, and she had a moment to notice how his rough palms were careful against her skin before he kissed her. It was brief and chaste, appropriate for their audience, but something warm unfurled in her chest at the tenderness of it. "Hello, Mrs. Mackenzie," he murmured, and she found herself smiling. They signed the register, accepted the congratulations of the Garcias, and walked out into the afternoon sunshine as husband and wife. Zara felt as if she were watching herself from a distance, unable to quite believe what she had just done. "I have a room at the boarding house," Harrison said. "I know this is all very quick, and I do not want to rush you into anything you are not ready for. We can stay there tonight, just sleep, and head up to the cabin in the morning. Or if you would prefer, we could leave now. Whatever makes you comfortable." She appreciated the consideration, the way he gave her choices. "Let's stay tonight. I would like to get to know you a bit more before we are completely isolated." He looked relieved. "Good. That sounds good." The boarding house was run by an elderly woman who looked at them with curious eyes but asked no questions. Harrison had paid for a room with a double bed, but he had also spread blankets on the floor, creating a makeshift second bed. "I meant what I said," he told Zara once they were alone. "No pressure. We have time to figure everything out." They spent the evening talking. Harrison told her about his life, how he had come west from Ohio after the war, looking for peace and space away from the crowds and noise of civilization. He had worked various jobs before finding the Manzano Mountains and claiming land for a homestead. He supported himself through trapping, hunting, and occasional guiding work for wealthy Eastern men who wanted to experience the wilderness. "It is a good life," he said. "Hard sometimes, especially in winter. But honest, clean. I know who I am up there in a way I never did when I was trying to fit into towns and cities." Zara told him about her family, her years of being passed between relatives, the constant message that she was too much trouble, too different, too difficult. "They were wrong," Harrison said firmly. "There is nothing wrong with having a backbone or speaking your mind. Anyone who told you otherwise was trying to make you smaller so they could feel bigger." His certainty, his simple acceptance of what everyone else had condemned, made her throat tight with emotion. They talked until late, sitting on the bed with careful space between them, learning each other's histories and hopes. When exhaustion finally claimed them, Harrison took the floor blankets without complaint, and Zara lay in the bed thinking about the strange turns life could take. She woke to dawn light and found Harrison already up, repacking his supplies with quiet efficiency. He glanced over and smiled. "Morning. Ready to see your new home." They ate breakfast at the boarding house, then walked to the livery where Harrison's mule waited, already loaded. He had a horse as well, a sturdy bay mare with intelligent eyes. "She is called Rosie," Harrison said, stroking the mare's neck. gentle as a lamb and sure-footed on mountain trails. Have you ridden much? Not in years, but I know the basics. Good. It is about a 6-hour ride to the cabin. We will take it easy. They left Las Lunas in the cool of early morning, riding east toward mountains that grew more distinct with every passing mile. The desert landscape gradually transformed, sparse vegetation giving way to piñon and juniper, then to ponderosa pines as they climbed higher. The air grew cooler and clearer, scented with sage and pine. Harrison rode slightly ahead, checking back frequently to make sure Zara was managing. She found the rhythm of riding coming back to her, her body remembering skills learned in childhood. The country was beautiful in a wild, untamed way that stirred something in her chest. This was land that did not judge, did not care about propriety or social standing. It simply existed, indifferent and magnificent. They stopped by a stream to water the animals and eat lunch. Harrison shared bread and cheese and dried apples, and they sat on smooth rocks listening to water rush over stones. "What do you think so far?" he asked. "It is beautiful. Lonely, but beautiful. Lonely does not seem so bad when you have company." He glanced at her, a hint of shyness in his expression. "I am glad you are here, Zara. I know we are still strangers in many ways, but I have a good feeling about this, about us." "I do too," she admitted. "I am terrified but also excited. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." They continued riding as the sun climbed higher. The terrain grew steeper, the trail narrowing as it wound between towering pines. Harrison pointed out landmarks, a distinctive rock formation, a spring with the best water, places where deer congregated in the evenings. Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, they crested a ridge and Harrison pointed ahead. "There, that is home." The cabin sat in a small meadow surrounded by forest. It was larger than Zara had expected, built of thick logs chinked with mud, with a stone chimney at one end and a covered porch running the length of the front. A small barn stood nearby, and she could see a garden plot, currently bare but clearly cultivated in warmer months. A creek ran along one edge of the meadow, its sound a constant gentle music. "Harrison, it is wonderful," he grinned, clearly pleased by her reaction. "Come on, let's get you inside." The cabin's interior was dim after the bright sunlight, but as her eyes adjusted, Zara took in details. One large main room served as kitchen and living space, with a table and chairs near the fireplace, shelves lined with supplies, and a cast iron stove for cooking. A door led to what must be the bedroom. The floors were wood, carefully fitted and polished from years of wear. Furs covered the walls, providing insulation and decoration. It was simple but surprisingly comfortable, the work of someone who took pride in his home. "Bedroom is through there," Harrison said, setting down her bag. "I will give you time to settle in. I need to unload the mule and get the animals taken care of." Left alone, Zara explored the cabin more thoroughly. The bedroom held a large bed frame filled with what looked like fresh straw and covered with blankets and furs. A trunk sat at the foot of the bed, and pegs on the wall served for hanging clothes. A small mirror hung above a washstand. Simple but adequate. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses on pegs, setting her hairbrush on the washstand. The book of poetry she placed on the small table beside the bed. When everything was put away, she stood in the middle of the room feeling strange and displaced. This was her home now. This mountain cabin with a man she barely knew. Outside, she found Harrison forking hay to the animals. He had removed his shirt in the warmth of the afternoon, and Zara found herself staring at the play of muscles across his back and shoulders. He moved with easy strength, his body clearly accustomed to demanding physical labor. He glanced over and caught her watching. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Harrison set down the pitchfork and walked over, pulling his shirt back on. "What do you think? Honestly, I think it is more than I expected, better than I expected. Good." He looked at the sky, judging the light. "Too late to start any major work today. How about I show you around and we make some supper?" They walked the perimeter of the meadow while Harrison pointed out his trap lines, the best fishing spots in the creek, the garden where he grew vegetables in summer. He showed her the small smokehouse, the root cellar where preserved food was stored, the woodshed with its neatly stacked logs. "I do most of my work in fall and winter," he explained. "Trapping is best when the fur is thick. Spring and summer I mostly focus on maintaining the place, hunting for meat, putting up food for winter. It is a cycle. Everything has its season." "What about loneliness? Do you ever wish you had neighbors?" "Sometimes, but people are complicated. They judge and gossip and try to tell you how to live. Up here, the only judge is nature, and she is harsh but fair. You follow her rules, respect her power, and she will provide what you need." He looked at her seriously. "But having you here changes things. I do not want you to be lonely. If you need to go down to town sometimes to see people, we can do that. I do not want this to feel like a prison." "It does not feel like a prison. It feels like freedom." She realized it was true. Standing in this mountain meadow with wind in the pines and mountains surrounding them, she felt lighter than she had in years. No one here to tell her she was wrong, inadequate, unwanted. Just space and sky and possibility. They made supper together, working in the small kitchen with surprising coordination. Harrison had been living alone for so long that Zara expected him to be possessive of his space, but he welcomed her help, showed her where things were stored, and accepted her suggestions about seasoning the venison stew they were preparing. "You are a good cook," she said, tasting the stew. "You learn when you are alone. Either that or eat badly, and I like food too much for that." They ate at the table while evening light slanted through the windows. Harrison asked about her childhood before her father died, and she found herself sharing memories she had not thought about in years. Happy memories of family dinners, her mother's laughter, her sisters before they grew distant and concerned only with securing their own futures. "You miss them," Harrison observed. "I miss who they were. I do not miss who they became." She paused, then added quietly, "I hope I am not who they think I am, difficult, impossible, a burden." "Zara," he waited until she looked at him, "you are none of those things. And even if you were, even if you turn out to be the most difficult, impossible, ornery woman in the territory, you are still my wife. You still belong here. Nothing is going to change that." The simple certainty in his voice made her eyes sting. She blinked rapidly, refusing to cry. After supper, they washed dishes together, and Zara noticed how domesticity came easily to them despite their newness to each other. Harrison had a quiet competence that made working with him comfortable rather than awkward. As darkness fell, he lit lamps and built up the fire. Zara sat in one of the chairs pulled close to the hearth, watching flames dance over logs. "I will take the floor tonight," Harrison said. "Give you privacy until you are ready to share the bed, no rush on any of it." "Harrison." She took a breath for courage. "You have been nothing but kind and respectful, but we are married. I do not expect you to sleep on the floor in your own home. I do not want you to feel pressured. I do not. I feel grateful." She met his eyes. "We are partners, remember? That was what you said. Partners share things, including a bed." He studied her face for a long moment. "If you are sure, I am sure." They prepared for bed with careful modesty, changing in separate areas, giving each other privacy. When Zara finally slipped under the covers, she was intensely aware of Harrison's presence beside her, the warmth of his body, the sound of his breathing. They lay in the darkness, not touching, both of them clearly uncertain how to proceed. "Can I hold you?" Harrison asked quietly. "Just hold you. I have been alone for so long, and you are here now, and I just want to feel that you are real." In answer, Zara shifted closer, and his arm came around her, pulling her against his chest. He was warm and solid, and she could feel the steady beat of his heart against her back. His other arm folded over her waist, and she laced her fingers through his. "This is nice," she whispered. "It is better than nice," he rumbled. "It is perfect." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two lonely people who had found unexpected shelter in each other's arms. Zara woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. She sat up to find Harrison already dressed, moving quietly around the main room. "Morning," he said with a smile. "Hope I did not wake you. What time is it?" "Around 7. I usually start early." "Lots to do, and daylight does not wait." He poured coffee and brought her a cup. "But no rush. Take your time getting up." She sipped the coffee, strong and hot, and watched him move around the cabin. He had an economy of motion, no wasted energy, each task flowing into the next. She realized he was nervous, trying to stay busy to hide it. "What is the plan for today?" she asked. "I need to check my trap lines, see if any animals got caught over the few days I was gone. Should take most of the morning. You could come with me or stay here and settle in more." "Whatever you prefer." "I will come with you. I want to learn about your work." His face brightened. "Good. I was hoping you would say that." They ate a quick breakfast of bread and eggs, then set out into the forest. The morning was cool and fresh, birds calling from the trees. Harrison carried his rifle over one shoulder and moved through the undergrowth with surprising silence for such a large man. Zara followed, trying to step quietly, learning to read the land as he did. The trap lines ran in a wide circuit through the forest. Harrison checked each trap, resetting some, removing others. "I do not trap in summer," he explained. "Fur is not good and the animals need time to breed and raise their young. But I check the lines anyway, make sure everything is in good condition for when cold weather comes." They walked for hours, Harrison pointing out animal tracks, edible plants, signs of predators. Zara absorbed the information, fascinated by his knowledge. He read the forest like other men read newspapers, understanding the story written in broken branches and disturbed earth. At one point they stopped by a small waterfall and Harrison pulled bread and cheese from his pack. They sat on rocks and ate while watching water cascade into a clear pool. "You are happy here," Zara said. "It was not a question. I am, but I am happier with you here." He looked at her seriously. "I know we still have a lot to learn about each other, but I want you to know that I meant everything I said. You have a place here, a real place, and I am going to do everything I can to make sure you feel that every single day." "Why?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Why me?" "You could have found someone in town, someone younger or prettier or more accomplished. Why take a chance on me?" Harrison set down his food and turned to face her fully. "Because when I looked at you, I saw strength. Real strength. Not the kind that comes from an easy life, but the kind that comes from surviving hard things and not breaking. I saw someone who kept working even when she was not appreciated, who kept her dignity even when people tried to strip it away. And I saw loneliness that matched my own." He reached out and took her hand. "I do not need pretty or young or accomplished. I need real, and you are the most real person I have met in a very long time." Zara felt tears slide down her cheeks. Harrison wiped them away gently with his thumb. "No more crying. We are done with sad things. From now on, we build something good." "Deal, deal," she whispered. He leaned forward and kissed her, and this time it was not the chaste kiss of their wedding but something deeper, more real. His lips were warm and sure, and when he pulled back, they were both breathing faster. "We should get back," he said, his voice rough. "Still have work to do." The walk back to the cabin felt charged with new awareness. Zara caught herself watching the way Harrison moved, the play of muscle under his shirt, the strength in his hands. She found herself imagining those hands on her skin, and heat that had nothing to do with the climbing sun warmed her cheeks. That evening, after supper, Harrison taught her to shoot. They set up targets in the meadow, and he showed her how to hold the rifle, how to sight down the barrel, how to control her breathing before squeezing the trigger. "You are a natural," he said after she hit the target 3 times in a row. "Have you shot before?" "My father taught me when I was young, before he died. He did a good job. Shooting is an important skill up here, for hunting and protection." "Protection from what?" "Mountain lions sometimes, bears if you surprise them, and occasionally men who think a woman alone is easy prey." His expression hardened. "But you are not alone anymore. Anyone who tries to hurt you will have to go through me first, and I promise that will not end well for them." The fierce protectiveness in his voice sent warmth through her chest. She stepped closer to him, tilted her face up. "Kiss me again," she said. His eyes darkened. He set down the rifle carefully, then pulled her against him. This kiss was hungry, searching, and she responded in kind, her arms wrapping around his neck. His hands settled on her waist, then slid up her back, pressing her closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. "I want you," he said roughly, "but I do not want to rush you." "You are not rushing me. I want this. I want you." He swept her up into his arms, carrying her toward the cabin with easy strength. She laughed, delighted by the romance of the gesture, and he grinned down at her. "I have been thinking about this since I first saw you," he admitted. "You mean 2 days ago? Felt like longer. Felt like I was waiting for you my whole life." Inside, he set her down gently beside the bed. They undressed each other slowly, learning each other's bodies with hands and lips. Harrison was patient and thorough, making sure she felt pleasure before seeking his own. When they finally came together, Zara felt a rightness that went beyond physical sensation. This was what belonging felt like. This was home. Afterward, they lay tangled in the blankets, Harrison running his fingers through her unbound hair. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know it is too soon to say it, but I do not care. I love you, Zara." "I love you too," she whispered, surprised by how true it was. She had known him only days, but somehow her heart recognized him as if they had been searching for each other across years and distances. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "My wife," he murmured. "My partner, my Zara, my Harrison." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and when Zara woke in the deep night to find his arms still around her, she felt a peace she had never known before. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both new and timeless. They woke with the sun and worked through the morning, Harrison teaching Zara the 100 small skills required for mountain living. She learned to identify edible plants, to preserve meat, to read weather in the sky. She learned where he kept supplies, how to maintain the cabin, how to care for the animals. Harrison was an excellent teacher, patient and thorough, never making her feel stupid for asking questions. In turn, Zara brought her own skills to their partnership. She reorganized the cabin's storage for better efficiency, planted herbs near the door, mended his clothes with neat, careful stitches. "You make this place feel like a real home," Harrison said one evening, looking around the cabin with satisfaction. "It was just a shelter before. Now, it is something more." They explored the surrounding country together, Harrison showing her hidden valleys and secret springs. He taught her to fish in the creek, to identify animal tracks, to move quietly through the forest. She proved a quick student. her natural intelligence and determination serving her well. One afternoon, 3 weeks after their arrival, they rode to a high overlook where they could see for miles in every direction. Mountains rolled away in shades of blue and purple, forests stretching endlessly. Las Lunas was visible far in the distance, small and insignificant from this height. "You miss it?" Harrison asked. "Town, people?" "No, not even a little." Zara leaned against his chest, his arms around her waist. "I miss nothing about that life. This is better. This is real. No regrets about marrying a stranger and moving to the middle of nowhere." She turned in his arms to face him. "My only regret is that we did not find each other sooner. You have given me something I never thought I would have. Not just a home, but a sense of belonging. Of being wanted exactly as I am." He kissed her deeply, and she melted against him, still amazed by the passion between them. Their physical connection had only grown stronger over the weeks, and she found herself craving his touch, his presence, his love. As summer deepened into its full heat, Zara settled into mountain life with surprising ease. The work was hard but satisfying, each day bringing tangible results. She could see the difference her presence made in the neat cabin, the productive garden, the well-tended animals. More than that, she could see the difference in Harrison. He smiled more, laughed more, touched her constantly as if assuring himself she was real. At night, they made love with increasing passion and confidence, learning to please each other, to communicate without words. One evening in July, as they sat on the porch watching stars emerge, Harrison said, "I have been thinking." "About what?" "About the future, about family." He glanced at her, suddenly shy. "How do you feel about children?" Zara felt warmth spread through her chest. "I would like children. Several if possible." "Several, huh?" He grinned. "I like the sound of that. A cabin full of kids, teaching them to fish and track and live off the land. Teaching them to read and write and think," Zara added. "We will need books, lots of books. We will get them. Whatever you need to raise our children right, we will get it." She kissed him, grateful for his support, his vision of a future that included her so completely. "I might already be pregnant," she said softly. "We have not exactly been careful." His eyes widened, then joy spread across his face. "Really, you think so? It is possible." He placed his large hand gently on her stomach. "A baby, our baby." His voice was full of wonder. "Zara, you have made me happier than I ever thought possible. You have done the same for me." They sat in the gathering dark, holding each other, imagining the life growing inside her, the family they would build together. As it turned out, Zara was pregnant. Her monthly courses stopped, and morning sickness confirmed what they both hoped. Harrison was attentive to the point of fussiness, insisting she rest more, work less, take care of herself. "I am pregnant, not dying," she protested when he tried to forbid her from gathering firewood. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I can still work. I just want you safe, both of you safe. We will be safe, but I will go crazy if you make me sit still all the time." She cupped his face in her hands. "Trust me to know my own body. I will ask for help when I need it." He relented, though he still watched her carefully, ready to jump in if she showed any sign of strain. As summer faded into fall, Harrison began preparing for winter with increased urgency. He hunted extensively, smoking and preserving meat. He cut and stacked firewood until the woodshed overflowed. He checked and rechecked supplies, making a list of what they would need from town. "I am going down to Las Lunas in 2 weeks," he told Zara. "Want to go with me?" She considered, then shook her head. "I do not think so. There is nothing there I need to see. Not even to show off your mountain man husband." He was teasing, but she heard the real question underneath. He wanted to know if she was ashamed of him, of her choice. "Especially not that," she said firmly. "I do not need their approval or their opinions." They had their chance to see my worth and they missed it. Their loss. He kissed her, clearly pleased by her answer. The morning he left for town, Zara woke to find him already dressed, packing supplies onto the mule. "I will be back tomorrow night," he promised. "Maybe the morning after if the weather turns. You will be all right. I will be fine. I have the rifle, plenty of food, and good sense. Go, get what we need." He kissed her goodbye, his hands gentle on her slightly rounded belly. "Take care of my family, always." She stood on the porch watching him ride away until he disappeared into the trees. Then she turned back to the cabin, feeling the silence of the mountain settle around her. It should have felt lonely, but instead it felt peaceful. This was her home now. She belonged here. She spent the day working in the garden, harvesting the last of the late vegetables before frost could claim them. The physical labor felt good, grounding. As she worked, she thought about the strange path that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she had been sleeping in a storage room, unwanted and alone. Now she was married to a good man, carrying his child, living in a beautiful mountain paradise. Life could change so quickly. Everything could transform in a moment if you were brave enough to say yes to possibility. That night, she made supper for one and ate by the fire, missing Harrison but content in her solitude. She was reading by lamplight when she heard something outside. Not an animal, the sounds were too measured, too deliberate. Footsteps. Her heart kicked up. Harrison would not be back until tomorrow at earliest. She set down her book and picked up the rifle, checking to make sure it was loaded. The footsteps came closer. A shadow crossed the window. Then someone knocked on the door. "Mrs. Mackenzie, are you in there?" She did not recognize the voice, but something about it made her skin crawl. She moved closer to the door but did not open it. "Who is this?" "Theodore Whitman. We met in Las Lunas. I have business to discuss with your husband." The man who had tried to recruit her for his brothels. "What was he doing here?" "My husband is not home. You should leave." "When will he return?" "I do not know. He is on a hunting trip, could be gone for days." She heard him try the door handle. Thank God Harrison had installed a solid bar. The door did not budge. "Mrs. Mackenzie, I think we should talk. I have been making inquiries about you and your husband. Interesting story, how he married a desperate woman and spirited her away to this isolated cabin. Makes a person wonder what his real intentions were." "His intentions were honorable, which is more than I can say for yours. Leave now, or I will shoot you for trespassing." Theodore laughed. "You would not dare. You are alone and pregnant, not exactly in a position to make threats." "I am not making threats. I am making promises." She cocked the rifle, letting him hear the distinct sound. "This rifle is loaded and aimed at the door. If you try to break in, I will shoot. I am not a bad shot, and at this distance I will not miss." Silence. Then Whitman said, "You are making a mistake. I came here to offer you a way out. Your husband is going to work you to death up here. Have you thought about what happens if something goes wrong with the baby? No doctor, no help, just you and him and miles of wilderness. Is that really the life you want?" "It is exactly the life I want. Now leave." "I will go. But think about what I said. When things get hard, when you realize what a mistake you have made, come find me. My offer still stands." She heard his footsteps retreat, but she did not lower the rifle until the sounds faded completely. Even then, she kept it close, sitting in the chair by the fire with the weapon across her lap, listening to the night. Sleep was impossible. Every sound made her jump. What if Whitman came back? What if he tried to break in while she was sleeping? She should have shot him when she had the chance, but the thought of actually killing someone, even someone as vile as Whitman, made her sick. Dawn came as a relief. As soon as there was enough light, she went outside to check for tracks. She found them easily. Whitman's footprints circling the cabin, checking the barn, trying windows. The violation of his presence made her furious. She spent the day on edge, starting at shadows, the rifle always within reach. When she finally heard hoofbeats late in the afternoon, she grabbed the weapon and positioned herself by a window, ready to shoot if it was Whitman returning. But it was Harrison, riding into the clearing with the loaded mule trailing behind. Relief flooded through her so strongly that her knees went weak. She ran out to meet him, and he swung down from the horse with a smile that faded when he saw her face. "What is wrong? What happened?" She told him everything while he listened with growing fury. By the time she finished, his hands were clenched into fists and his jaw was tight with anger. "He came here, threatened you." Harrison's voice was dangerously quiet. "I am going to kill him." "Harrison, no, he is not worth it. He threatened my wife. He came to my home while I was gone and tried to intimidate you." He started toward his horse, clearly intending to ride straight to town. Zara grabbed his arm. "Wait, think about this. If you kill him, you could hang. They would not care that he threatened me. They would just see a mountain man murdering a businessman. Is that the future you want for our child? Growing up without a father," her words stopped him. He stood rigid, breathing hard, clearly fighting for control. "He cannot get away with this. He will not. But we will handle it smart, not rashly." She pulled him toward the cabin. "Come inside. Let's think this through." Inside, Harrison paced like a caged animal while Zara made coffee. She let him burn off the initial fury, then sat him down at the table. "Tell me about your trip to town. Did you see Whitman there?" "No, but I heard talk about him. Apparently he has been asking questions about us, about the cabin's location, about whether I leave you alone. People thought it was odd, but no one did anything about it. Of course not. He is wealthy and I am nobody." The old bitterness crept into her voice. "You are not nobody. You are my wife. That makes you the most important person in the world to me." He reached across the table and took her hands. "I am sorry I left you alone. I should have anticipated something like this. How could you? We are miles from town, on your own land. We should be safe here. We are not safe if men like Whitman think they can come here and harass you." He stood and began pacing again. "I am going to ride property lines, set up better warning systems, and I am teaching you to shoot better. You need to be able to defend yourself without hesitation." Over the following days, Harrison fortified their home. He set up tripwires that would knock over pans filled with rocks, creating noise if anyone approached. He built a blind near the cabin where someone could hide and shoot if necessary. He drilled Zara relentlessly on shooting, making her practice until she could hit targets consistently. "I do not want to scare you," he said one evening as they cleaned the rifles together. "But you need to understand that we are isolated out here. Help is not coming if something goes wrong. We only have each other. I understand, and I am not scared, not really. Angry, yes, violated that someone came here uninvited, but not scared, not with you beside me." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I will protect you, whatever it takes. You and our baby are everything to me." 2 weeks passed without incident. Harrison remained vigilant, but gradually they returned to their normal routine. Winter was coming, and there was still work to do. They brought the garden produce inside to the root cellar, ensured the barn was secure for the animals, and continued stocking supplies. One afternoon, while Harrison was out checking trap lines, Zara heard the warning system activate. Pans clattered loudly from the north side of the property. She grabbed the rifle and positioned herself at the window, heart pounding. A rider emerged from the trees. Not Whitman, but a stranger. A young man, barely more than a boy, slumped in the saddle. His horse walked slowly, and even from a distance, Zara could see something was wrong. The rider reached the cabin and half fell, half dismounted. He leaned against his horse, clearly in pain. Zara debated for a moment, then opened the door slightly, keeping the rifle visible. "Who are you? What do you want?" The young man looked up, and she saw he could not be more than 18. His face was pale with pain and blood stained his shirt. "Please," he said hoarsely. "I need help. I got shot. They are following me." "Who is following you?" "Outlaws. I witnessed them robbing a payroll wagon. They shot me and have been chasing me for 2 days. Please, I do not want to die." Zara made a quick decision. Whether it was foolish or wise, she could not leave a wounded boy bleeding on her doorstep. "Come inside, quickly." She helped him into the cabin and onto a chair near the fire. His shirt was soaked with blood from a wound in his shoulder. "I need to look at this," she said, grabbing clean cloths and water. "What is your name?" "Samuel. Samuel Brennan." She cut away his shirt and examined the wound. The bullet had gone through his shoulder, missing bone but leaving an ugly wound that was already showing signs of infection. "This needs to be cleaned and stitched. It is going to hurt. Just do it. Please." She worked quickly, drawing on skills learned from her mother who had doctored their family. She cleaned the wound with whiskey, making Samuel scream, then stitched it closed with careful, neat stitches. She bandaged it tightly and made him drink water mixed with willow bark powder for the pain and fever. "How long until your husband returns?" Samuel asked once the worst was over. "Soon, I hope. Tell me about these outlaws. How many?" "3, maybe 4, I am not sure. I have been running, trying to lose them in the mountains, but I am so turned around I do not even know where I am anymore." "You are in the Manzano Mountains, about 30 miles from Las Lunas." "That far? I thought I was closer to Socorro." He closed his eyes, exhausted. Zara let him rest while she kept watch at the window. She did not know if Samuel was telling the truth, but his wounds were real enough, and he was just a boy. She could not turn him away. Harrison returned as the sun was setting. She heard his warning whistle, the signal they had established, and answered with her own. He came through the door with the rifle ready, relaxing slightly when he saw Zara was unharmed. Then his eyes landed on Samuel sleeping in the chair. "Who is this?" Zara explained quickly. Harrison examined Samuel's wound, checked his story by asking detailed questions when the boy woke, and finally seemed satisfied he was telling the truth. "If outlaws are trailing him, we need to be ready. Zara, get the spare rifle loaded. Samuel, can you shoot?" "Yes, sir." "Not well with my shoulder like this, but I will do my best. You will stay down unless absolutely necessary. Your job is to not die. Understood?" "Yes, sir." They spent the night taking turns on watch. Zara dozed fitfully by the fire while Harrison watched from the window. Near dawn, he woke her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Someone is coming. 3 riders." She took her position at the second window while Samuel crouched behind the table, holding a rifle awkwardly in his good hand. The riders entered the clearing as the sun rose. Hard-looking men with guns prominently displayed. They pulled up in front of the cabin and the lead rider called out, "We are looking for a boy. About 18, dark hair, wounded. Seen him." Harrison opened the door slightly, blocking the view inside. "This is private property." "You are trespassing." "We will leave as soon as you answer the question. We are bounty hunters chasing a thief. Boy stole money and shot a man. We are bringing him back for trial." "That is not true," Samuel called out before Harrison could stop him. "They are the thieves." "I saw them rob the payroll wagon." The riders exchanged glances. The leader smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. "Guess that answers our question. Send the boy out and we will be on our way." "Not happening," Harrison said. "The boy is under my protection." "If you have a legal claim, bring the sheriff." "We do not need the sheriff. We have authorization to use whatever force necessary to retrieve stolen property." "Then you are going to have a problem. because I also have authorization to defend my property and family with whatever force necessary. And friend, I promise I am better at force than you are." The standoff lasted several long seconds. Then one of the riders went for his gun. Harrison shot him before the weapon cleared the holster. The man fell from his horse, screaming. The other two riders scrambled for cover, firing wildly at the cabin. Zara aimed carefully and shot one in the leg, dropping him. The third rider abandoned his wounded companions and fled into the trees. Harrison stepped out with his rifle, keeping it trained on the two wounded men. "Drop your weapons, now." They complied. Harrison collected their guns while Zara kept her rifle pointed at them from the doorway. "Zara, bring rope." She did, and Harrison tied the wounded men securely. The one shot in the shoulder was bleeding badly, his face white with shock. The one shot in the leg was cursing steadily. "You killed him," the cursing man said. "You murdered my brother. Your brother drew on me in my own yard. That is not murder, that is self-defense." Harrison checked the man's leg wound. "You will both live if you get medical attention. Here is what is going to happen. I am taking you down to Las Lunas, where you are going to tell the sheriff exactly what you did. If you do not, I will make sure everyone knows you are the men who robbed that payroll wagon. Either way, your days of terrorizing people are over." He loaded the wounded men onto their horses and tied them into their saddles. Samuel, pale and shaking, watched from the doorway. "Thank you," he said to Harrison and Zara. "You saved my life." "You stay here with my wife until I get back," Harrison told him. "Rest and heal. When you are strong enough, I will make sure you get home safely." He kissed Zara deeply. "Bar the door. Do not open it for anyone but me. I will be back as soon as I can." She watched him ride away with his prisoners, worry tight in her chest. What if there were more outlaws? What if Whitman tried something while Harrison was gone? What if something happened to Harrison in town? But she forced the fears down and returned to the cabin. Samuel was feverish, his wound showing signs of infection despite her care. She spent the day nursing him, changing his bandages, making him drink willow bark tea, keeping cold compresses on his forehead. Night fell, and still Harrison had not returned. Zara tried not to imagine worst scenarios as she kept watch at the window. Samuel thrashed on the bed, delirious with fever. She tended him through the night, her exhaustion making her clumsy. Dawn was breaking when she finally heard the warning whistle. She answered, and moments later Harrison rode into the clearing. She ran outside and threw herself into his arms as he dismounted. "I was so worried. I am fine. Everything is fine." He held her tight, then pulled back to look at her. "How is Samuel?" "Feverish. The wound is infected. I brought a doctor. He insisted on coming back with me." Harrison gestured, and a second rider emerged from the trees, a gray-haired man with a medical bag. Dr. Matthews examined Samuel thoroughly, cleaned and redressed his wound, and left medicine with instructions for care. "He should recover," the doctor told them. "The infection is not too advanced. Keep the wound clean, make sure he rests, and he should be fine in a few weeks." After the doctor left, Harrison told Zara what had happened in Las Lunas. The outlaws had confessed to the robbery when faced with multiple witnesses and the testimony of the injured payroll guards. They would hang for their crimes. The sheriff had commended Harrison for his actions and assured him there would be no trouble for shooting in self-defense. "And I had another conversation while I was in town," Harrison added, "with Theodore Whitman." Zara tensed. "What happened?" "I told him that if he ever came near my property or my wife again, I would kill him and bury him so deep no one would ever find the body. I told him that every man in this territory would look the other way because everyone knows what kind of business he runs and what kind of man he is. I made it very clear that you are under my protection, and anyone who threatens you will answer to me." How did he respond? He tried to act offended, tried to say he was just being friendly. But he saw in my eyes that I meant every word. He will not bother us again. Harrison pulled her close. "I am sorry you have had to deal with so much. This was supposed to be a safe haven, and instead you have had threats and shootouts. It is still a safe haven because you are here, because we face everything together." She kissed him softly. "I am not afraid, Harrison. Not of outlaws or threats or anything else. As long as we have each other, we can handle whatever comes." Samuel recovered slowly over the following weeks. He proved to be a sweet-natured boy with a quick mind and genuine gratitude for their care. Harrison taught him mountain skills during his convalescence, and Samuel absorbed the lessons eagerly. "I wish I could stay here," he said one evening. "This is the most peace I have ever known." "Why can you not stay?" Zara asked. "My mother. She is alone in Socorro. My father died last year, and I am all she has. I need to get back to her, let her know I am alive." When Samuel was finally well enough to travel, Harrison accompanied him to Socorro to ensure his safe arrival. He returned 3 days later with news. Samuel's mother is a widow struggling to make ends meet. I offered her a proposition. She can move here, live in a small cabin I will build near ours. She can help you with the baby when it comes, and Samuel can work with me, learning the trade. They would have security, and we would have neighbors we trust. "That is a wonderful idea," Zara said. "I like Samuel, and I would enjoy having another woman nearby." So it was arranged. Harrison spent the late fall building a second cabin, smaller than theirs but well constructed and comfortable. Samuel and his mother, Anna, moved in just before the first snow. Anna was a quiet, kind woman in her 40s who had been worn down by poverty and loss. Having a safe place and Zara's friendship seemed to revive her spirit. The two women grew close, working together on projects, sharing meals, keeping each other company when the men were out working. Winter arrived with spectacular snowfalls that blanketed the mountain in white. The two cabins seemed like islands in a sea of snow, smoke rising from chimneys, lamplight glowing warmly in the darkness. Zara's pregnancy progressed, her belly growing round. Harrison was constantly concerned, checking on her, making sure she rested enough. Anna laughed at his fussiness but also reassured him that Zara was healthy and strong. "I will be here when the baby comes," Anna promised. "I have delivered many babies. Everything will be fine." Christmas came, and they celebrated together, the two families sharing food and gifts and laughter. Zara gave Harrison a warm coat she had sewn from skins he had tanned. He gave her a rocking chair he had built with his own hands, smooth and perfect, designed for nursing their baby. "It is beautiful," she said, running her hands over the polished wood. "You made this." "Been working on it in secret for months. Wanted you to have something special for when the baby comes." She kissed him, overwhelmed by the love and care in this gift. As winter deepened, they settled into a rhythm of domesticity. The men checked trap lines and hunted. The women managed the cabins, preserved food, sewed clothing. Evenings were spent together, telling stories, playing cards, reading aloud by firelight. Zara had never been happier. She had found her place, not just in the physical space of the cabin but in the life they were building. She belonged here, completely and absolutely. One February evening her pains began. Anna came immediately, taking charge with calm efficiency. She sent Samuel to help Harrison, who was pacing the main room like a caged animal, useless and terrified. "Go outside," Anna told him firmly. "Cut firewood or something. You are making everyone nervous." The labor lasted through the night. Zara focused on Anna's steady voice, on breathing through the pain, on the knowledge that soon she would hold her child. Harrison defied Anna's orders and stayed close, holding Zara's hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement. As dawn broke, their son was born. He came into the world screaming, loud and healthy. Anna wrapped him in a clean blanket and placed him in Zara's arms. "You have a boy," she said with a tired smile. Zara looked down at her son, at his red face and waving fists, and felt her heart expand with love so fierce it hurt. Harrison knelt beside the bed, his eyes wet with tears as he touched his son's tiny hand. "He is perfect," Harrison whispered. "Absolutely perfect. Thank you, Zara. Thank you for giving me this, for giving me everything." They named him Henry James Mackenzie. Henry after Harrison's father, James after Zara's. He was a good baby, healthy and strong, with his father's gray-blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. The cabin filled with the sounds of infant life, crying and cooing and the soft rustle of movement. Harrison was a devoted father, constantly holding his son, talking to him, showing him the world outside the window. "He is too young to understand," Zara said, amused. "He will remember my voice. When he is older, he will know I was always here, always talking to him, always loving him." Spring came with melting snow and returning birds. Zara stood on the porch with Henry in her arms, watching as green returned to the meadow. Harrison came up behind her, wrapping his arms around them both. "Happy?" he asked. "So happy I could burst with it. Good, because I plan to keep you this happy for the rest of our lives." She leaned back against his solid warmth. "Remember when we met, when you offered me a place beside you, best decision I ever made. They said I would never find my place anywhere, that I was too difficult, too much trouble. They were wrong. You found your place, right here beside me, forever." She turned in his arms to kiss him, their son nestled between them, and knew he was right. She had found her place. Not just in this mountain meadow, but in Harrison's arms, in his heart, in the life they were building together. The years that followed were full and rich. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Elizabeth and another son named Thomas. The cabin rang with the sounds of children playing, learning, growing. Samuel married a girl from Socorro and brought her to the mountain, building his own cabin nearby. Their settlement grew into a small community, families who chose isolation and independence over the constraints of town life. Harrison taught his sons to hunt and trap, to respect the land and its rhythms. Zara taught all her children to read and write, to think for themselves, to stand up for what was right. Together, they built a legacy of strength and love. On their 10th anniversary, Harrison took Zara back to the overlook where they had stood years before. Las Lunas was still visible in the distance, but it meant nothing to her now. Her life was here in these mountains with this man. 10 years, Harrison said. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like you have been with me forever." "Both are true." She took his hand. "I cannot imagine my life without you. You saved me, Harrison." "We saved each other," he corrected. "I was alone and lonely, pretending I did not need anyone. You showed me what I was missing. You made my life complete." They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky in spectacular colors. Below them, their children played in the meadow, their laughter carrying on the wind. Smoke rose from their cabin chimney, a beacon of warmth and home. Zara thought about the girl she had been, sweeping steps in Las Lunas, believing she would never belong anywhere. That girl could never have imagined this life, this love, this bone-deep certainty of her place in the world. "I love you," she said to Harrison. "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for giving me a place beside you." He pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for taking a chance on a mountain man who did not know what he was asking for but knew enough to recognize a miracle when he saw one." They walked back down to their cabin as darkness fell, their fingers intertwined, their steps in sync. Behind them, the mountains stood eternal and unchanging. Before them, their children waited, their home glowed with light and warmth, and their future stretched out bright with possibility. Zara had found her place. Not by fitting into someone else's definition of who she should be, but by being exactly who she was and finding someone who loved her for it. Harrison had made her a place beside him, and she had made him a place beside her. Together, they had built something that would last forever. The children grew, and time passed, but the love between them only deepened. Through hard winters and abundant summers, through challenges and triumphs, through all the small moments that made up a life, they remained partners in every sense of the word. Years later, when their children had children of their own, when the cabin had been expanded and improved countless times, when their hair had grayed and their bodies slowed, they still sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sun set over their mountain. "I would do it all again," Zara said one evening. "Every moment, every choice, every challenge, it all led here to us." "So would I," Harrison agreed. "Every single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Zara Mackenzie, my partner, my love, my home." She smiled and kissed him, this man who had given her everything by simply offering her a place beside him. They had built a life together in these mountains, a life of hard work and deep love, of isolation and community, of struggle and joy. They had proved everyone wrong. She had found her place. Not in town, not in the conventional life people had imagined for her, but here in the wild, with a mountain man who saw her strength and loved her for it. As stars emerged overhead and the mountains settled into peaceful night around them, Zara felt complete. She had everything she needed, everything she had ever wanted, right here in Harrison's arms. She had found her forever place, and it was perfect.